May 1945. Europe was finally quiet. After 6 years of destruction, the war against Nazi Germany had ended. Hitler was dead. Berlin had fallen. The most powerful military machine in Europe had collapsed into smoke and rubble. Across the continent, soldiers who had survived the unimaginable allowed themselves something rare: relief. On the banks of the Elbe River, American and Soviet troops met for the first time. Cameras flashed as they shook hands. They traded patches, cigarettes, and cautious smiles. Newspapers around the world printed the photographs as proof that unity had defeated tyranny. It looked like history's happiest ending. But history rarely ends so cleanly. Because while the world celebrated victory, one American general was already thinking about the next war. George S. Patton did not trust the celebration. To many, the Soviet Union was a heroic ally that had sacrificed millions of lives to defeat Hitler. To Patton, there was something else entirely: a rising power with ambitions that stretched far beyond Berlin. He believed the alliance had always been temporary, a partnership of necessity, nothing more. When two powerful nations unite against a common enemy, the partnership lasts only as long as that enemy survives. In May 1945, the enemy was gone, and suddenly, the future felt uncertain. As American forces advanced from the west and the Red Army stormed in from the east, both sides raced across a collapsing Germany. But when it came time to capture Berlin, Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower made a decision that frustrated Patton deeply. He ordered American forces to halt. Berlin would fall to the Soviets. Strategically, it made sense. Politically, it avoided conflict. But to Patton, it was a mistake that would shape the future of Europe. He believed that every mile the Red Army occupied would become permanent, and he was watching closely. In the weeks following Germany's surrender, Allied commanders met for ceremonies and military gatherings. There were parades, inspections, banquets designed to symbolize cooperation between East and West. One such gathering became the subject of legend. The setting was formal. Medals gleamed under bright lights. Interpreters stood ready between languages. Vodka flowed freely, as was tradition in Soviet military culture. Toasts were offered frequently: to victory, to sacrifice, to unity between nations. In that room sat George Patton. Accounts differ on the exact details of what happened next. Some versions are dramatic, others are more restrained, but they all agree on one essential truth: the atmosphere was tense beneath the surface. When a high-ranking Soviet commander raised his glass and proposed a toast to Allied friendship, the expectation was clear. Everyone would drink. Everyone would smile. The war was over. But Patton hesitated. Refusing a toast in Russian culture was not a small gesture. It was a direct insult. Some witnesses later claimed he openly declined at first. Others suggest he responded bluntly before eventually participating. The precise wording has been debated by historians for decades. What matters more than the exact sentence is the mindset behind it. Patton did not believe in pretending. He saw ideological conflict already forming. He believed Soviet expansion into Eastern Europe was not temporary liberation, but the beginning of long-term control. Poland, Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia. As Nazi forces withdrew, Soviet influence filled the vacuum. Patton feared that once American troops returned home, there would be nothing to stop further expansion. He reportedly expressed concern that the United States had defeated one dictatorship only to empower another. To him, the moment called for strength, not ceremony. From a psychological standpoint, Patton was a product of total war. He believed momentum was everything. Once you stop advancing, you surrender initiative. Once you allow a rival to grow stronger, future conflict becomes more costly. Many American leaders disagreed. The public was exhausted. Families wanted peace. Soldiers wanted to go home. The idea of confronting a recent ally was politically impossible. Diplomacy required restraint. Patton struggled with restraint. As months passed, tensions between the former allies intensified. Disagreements over occupied territories grew sharper. Mutual suspicion replaced wartime cooperation. The unity of 1945 slowly gave way to the division of the Cold War. Looking back, historians still debate Patton's perspective. Was he dangerously aggressive? Or did he recognize ideological incompatibility earlier than others? It's easy to judge decisions with hindsight. We know now that the Iron Curtain would descend across Europe. We know that Berlin would become divided, that nuclear weapons would define a new era of fear, that proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam would follow. But in May 1945, none of that was certain. All that existed was a fragile peace and a room filled with raised glasses. That banquet, whether dramatic or subdued in reality, symbolizes something larger than a single insult or refusal. It represents the moment when alliance turned into rivalry. Two superpowers standing side by side, already measuring each other. History teaches us something uncomfortable. Alliances formed in crisis often fracture in victory. When survival is threatened, differences are set aside. When survival is secured, those differences return, sometimes stronger than before. The photographs from the Elbe River show smiling soldiers embracing. But beneath those smiles, strategic calculations were already underway. The war had ended. The competition had not. And within a few short years, the world would divide into East and West, into NATO and the Warsaw Pact, into decades of silent confrontation. Whether Patton was prophetic or impractical remains debated. But one thing is undeniable. The seeds of the Cold War were planted before the victory celebrations had even finished. If you enjoy exploring the hidden tensions behind famous historical moments, the psychology, the power struggles, the decisions that shaped the modern world, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the most important turning points in history don't happen during battles. They happen during toasts. And the next story might change the way you see the past forever.